After a hot start, the Sun Belt has dropped 2 straight bowl games. Which was worse? South Alabama getting blown out or the Louisiana Raging Cajuns giving it away? It's Locked On Sun Belt.
You are Locked On Sun Belt, your daily podcast on the Sun Belt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Dave Schultz back with another edition of Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, we will talk about the latest Sunbelt Bowl game. The Raging Cajuns last Friday, it's already been a few days, dropped one to Houston, and we'll talk about the transfer portal. Some guys from Troy are already in the portal. South Alabama has lost some players. And then we find out kind of what the portal is all about, not necessarily for guys to totally improve on their situation, but guys that have been passed over in their situation. We will get to that later on as well. And don't forget, this week is conference play in basketball as well. So I started out the show asking which is worse because South Alabama didn't show up. They got blown out from the get-go. They had a couple of chances to get back in the ballgame and could not take advantage of those chances. And it really was not, what was the final score? 44-23, not nearly as close as that game would indicate. And so they were embarrassed. They underperformed. They have to make some changes, whatever that is in the offseason. It shouldn't really take away from the great season that they had if it was just a one-off, but, you know, it looked like Western Kentucky was prepared for them, and they were not prepared for Western Kentucky. Or what happened in Shreveport, in the freezing cold in Shreveport, all kinds of issues there at the Independence Bowl. People got stuck in the elevator. They were okay. There was no water for the bathroom. That's not great, at least in the press box. And so they were dealing with their issues. But the Louisiana Raging Cajuns came out, and they were on fire. Chandler Fields playing, had a good ball game. The quarterback, 17-25, 169. Not necessarily spectacular, but at the time outplaying Clayton Tune, who is among the nation's leader in passing and touchdown passes. And it was all UL up until it wasn't. And it was 13-0 when the game started to turn around. Cajuns were up 13-0, and they just sort of quietly gave it away. They couldn't put up a couple of touchdowns when they had the chance to pull away a little bit. So they kicked a field goal after, they got a punt return down to the 27-yard line. They couldn't even get a first down. So that made it 13-0. They had a chance to kind of, I don't want to say put it away, but stretch out their lead to 16-0 or 20-0. There was a pass, 4th and 2, that Nathaniel Dell, the nation's leading touchdown receiver, fumbled. The problem was the defensive back for Louisiana, his left hand was on the out-of-bounds line, and his, left calf was touching the football. It wasn't ruled a fumble to begin with, but you could clearly see on replay it was a fumble. Unfortunately, he was out of bounds, and they gave the ball back to Houston, and that made it 16-7. So instead of maybe, again, 16-0, 20-0, and kind of putting it away, Houston got back in the ballgame. Now, having said that, they did a really good job of putting a field goal on at the end of the half. Raging Cajuns went down the whole field, and Kenneth Almendarez kicks a 32-yard field goal. Great drive by the Cajuns to at least get half of those points back and making it a 10-point game at half. Then Houston comes out and scores a touchdown right away. 13 plays, not right away, but a 5.5-minute drive, and they get right back in the game. So all of a sudden, it's a 13-3 run, and Houston is right back in the ball game, and then the Cajuns fumble. But then the Cajuns defense steps up. They, being the Houston Cougars, go for it on 4th and 1, and they get a stop on 4th and 1, a run for no gain. Cajuns have to punt. The Houston then goes and kicks a field goal, but they once again, 1st and goal at the 2, and the defense forces a punt. So the defense, which has been on the field almost all of the third quarter and most of the second half, absolutely stepped up numerous times and have kept the Cajuns in this ball game. But then, and they tied it up. The Cougars tied it up at 16, and it's right at the beginning of the fourth quarter. So you can't run out the whole fourth quarter. But the Cajuns went right down, and they needed to, as the defense was exhausted. And they are 1st and goal at the Houston 9. They are just running it down their throat. And they've gone to backup quarterback Zeon Chris, and they're just running it down their throat. A couple of passes in there, but it's basically Zeon Chris run for 4. Zeon Chris run for 1. Chris Smith run for 4. He did get a 9-yard pass to Neil Johnson for 9. Zeon Chris run for 25 yards to get inside the 10. But then Chris Smith, his second fumble of the half, or second fumble of the game, and it was at the 5-yard. They were at the Houston 4. They were even inside the 4 when he fumbled when they started out at the 9-yard line. And missing an opportunity to score in that chance, right? The Cajuns going to take a 19-16 lead, a 23-16 lead, whatever the case is, but they fumble it away. But then they get another defensive stand. Houston gets 1 first down, and then they get a punt that's all of 22 yards, and the Cajuns are in business. 1st down and 10 at the 45. You need like 2 or 3 first downs to kick a field goal. There's only 5 minutes left, and they couldn't do it. They got 1 first down. They got to the 33. They're into the wind, and so they're facing 4th and 11 at the 34, and they punted it away. Then Houston throws or marches down the field against what is exhausted defense and goes in for the touchdown, 23-16. So which one is worse? And I don't really know. I'll be the first to tell you, I don't have a real opinion on this. I think the South Alabama one, maybe it's the difference between everyone coming back for South Alabama and a lot of the guys leaving for the Cajuns. Also, I do need to correct it. Zion Hill did play for the Cajuns. They actually had a big ball game. Chris Smith was playing well, but had a couple of key fumbles. Those guys opted out and should be credited for playing in a bowl game, knowing they weren't coming back. But which is worse? If you are the program, right? South Alabama, chance to win their 11th, have never won a bowl game and didn't show up. The Cajuns coming off a Sun Belt championship the year before, finished up strong, had to win a couple of ball games at the end and did so, and they gave it away, right? I mean, they were a 7-point underdog. It turns out Houston wins by 7, so it's a quote push, but they just gave the ball game away. Did a really good job in the first half. Defense was outstanding in the second half, and they couldn't get it done. They just gave the game away compared to South Alabama, which got blown out. Do you chalk up South Alabama's game as a bad game? I'm not sure, because if you play that as a series, you would think that South Alabama would make some adjustments to, what Western Kentucky was doing, whereas, the Cajuns things were a couple of fumbles. The weather was bad, although Houston's playing in the same bad weather. And I'm just not sure on which is worse, which sticks with you, right? A couple of bad plays turning the game around. Also, it should be mentioned, they South Alabama, or I should say, the Cajuns had like a 3rd and 1, maybe 3rd and inches, and one of the wide receivers hit one of the defensive backs for Houston late and just got a stupid penalty. As Kane Womack would say, and I saw former Cajuns on Twitter saying, what a selfish play. What a stupid play. Well after the play was done, nowhere near the play. And, that cost the Cajuns as well. So I don't know which is worse. I know they're both bad, but which is worse? Put it in the comments down below. Love to hear from you. Is it South Alabama getting blown out from the get-go and not having any answers at all for Western Kentucky, although they did play better in the second half, or the Raging Cajuns, which just gave the game away, had numerous chances to win, and just they didn't. They just could not win. All right, coming up next, we will talk about the transfer portal. As expected, some have gone in the transfer portal from South Alabama and some from Troy. And some of these are, higher profile players, and some are guys just looking for a chance to play. We will talk about that next. But first, need to tell you about LinkedIn Jobs. And these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. It's incredibly easy to add your job in the purple #hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Dave Schultz back on Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. We do have some people in the transfer portal. And again, we hear this all the time with the transfer portal. Well, we don't like the transfer portal. What about, working hard and, earning your spot? Well, sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes it just works out. Guys are better than you, right? And it's unfortunate when that's the case. And it is the case with South Alabama. Desmond Trotter, the backup quarterback, has decided to go in the transfer portal. He has been nothing but a great player for South Alabama. He came in and I think played a little bit at the end of his freshman year, and then played the following year and started a bunch of games, and then got replaced by Jake Bentley. Well, Jake Bentley is, at the time, among the active leaders in yardage in a career when he was playing last year. So going to be tough to beat him out. And then you get Carter Bradley, who everyone can see has an NFL arm. So it's tough to beat him. And even this year, he comes in on a cold, rainy day in Hattiesburg. Bradley is banged up, and he comes in and leads them down to a field goal. So pretty good. It was really the only chance he got to play meaningful minutes this year. But that's somebody that the transfer portal, I think, was made for. He's got 1 year left. I kind of believe he's already graduated. And we'll see if he ends up at a group of 5 school or maybe a lower level of a school. He's certainly athletic. He's very bright, has a good arm. But the guys in front of him were just a little bit better. There's nothing he could do about sticking it out and, competing. He did that, and he lost out. Twice, by the way. So we wish Desmond Trotter the best of luck as he moves on. Let's see who else. South Alabama's Terry Perry is in the portal. Did see some time at linebacker and defensive end, was a former walk-on. He's a grad transfer. He's got 1 year of eligibility left. And there was the wide receiver, Nashawn Dickerson. I always thought that maybe, I don't know if he didn't get a chance. He got hurt right at the end, right at the beginning, actually, of fall camp. But he's got some really good size. And we'll see what happens with him. He didn't get in there at the end of in the second half in the second half of the bowl game when Jalen Wayne went down. So, wide receiver is always one of those positions where, you can have 4 or 5 or 6 guys. South Alabama concentrates on, was on 3 this year, plus the tight ends, right? Jalen Wayne, Devin Voisin, and Colin Lacey. And Nashawn Dickerson would have been a good, guy to have in that wide receiver room because Devin Voisin and Colin Lacey are on the diminutive side, not your typical size. Not typical, I will rephrase that. You'd like them to be a little taller, basically, and Dickerson has that, but apparently just could not get on the field. He has 3 years of eligibility. Should mention about Desmond Trotter, he may come back. So he's kind of seeing what's out there, and he may just come back. Obviously, he would know he would be the backup again. But if he's got an opportunity to go play, we do wish him the best of luck. All right. We do have some more guys in the portal. And Troy, this is where, even the really good teams are losing players. And let's see here. It's tough for them to keep them. They lost Charles Strong, redshirt junior running back. He hasn't decided where he's going. Peter Castelli, redshirt freshman quarterback. He's decided he's out. But I guess the big name is out of Pinson Valley, Tez Johnson, and he's narrowed his choices down, according to On3, to Oklahoma State and Penn State. So Tez Johnson trying to, I don't know, maybe it's an NIL deal. Maybe it's to showcase a little bit higher. They don't have the prolific passing game that maybe Tez is looking for. I'm not sure necessarily Penn State has that either, but certainly Oklahoma State does. Let's see what he's done this year. I mean, he's had a couple of good seasons the last 2 years with Troy. 67 catches in 21, 735 yards, 56 catches in 22, 863 yards, 4 touchdowns. But if we look at, so again, doesn't seem like a lot. 4 touchdowns as a wide receiver. Let's see how many passing touchdowns they had, because it's not that many. They had 20 passing touchdowns, including Tez Johnson, had 1 passing touchdown. So Gunnar Watson had 14, Jared Dagey had 5, and Tez Johnson had the 1. So it's, again, when you're throwing for 2,800 yards, or I guess they threw for 3,400 yards, that's not bad. That's not bad. But remember, a couple of years ago, Bryce Young's throwing for like 4,800 yards. So you can do a little bit better than 2,800 yards. Gunnar Watson played in 13 ball games, didn't start all of them or, play the entire game in all of them. They were going back and forth. In fact, Jared Dagey was the starting quarterback for Troy into the South Alabama game, and they replaced him. And Gunnar Watson made a huge throw down the right side for a big conversion and leading Troy not only to a win in that ball game, but ended up leading them to a Sun Belt championship and a bowl game win as well. So you never know if Gunnar Watson all of a sudden figures it out, but Tez Johnson decides that he has had enough and he is deciding to leave. Let's see here quickly on 3, because now all of a sudden, by the way, we've had, before it was only like Old Dominion, and there wasn't a whole lot of, maybe Marshall had a couple. There wasn't a whole lot of teams, right? But now we got a bunch of guys, including, as you would expect, Texas State with G.J. Kinney. They got a bunch of guys transferring in to Texas State. They got Nash Jones from Natchitoches, Texas. Or Nacogdoches, I should say. It's Natchitoches, Louisiana, Nacogdoches, Texas. He's from Incarnate Word, so he follows his coach there. You got Cedric Roberts. Let's see. Jones is a 286-pound tackle. Cedric Roberts is a defensive lineman from OU. He's going to Texas State. Devin Wright is a defensive lineman, although it says only 205 pounds. That can't be right. He's from Boise State. He's going to Texas State. And then you have Ishmael Mahdi from Plano, Texas, running back. I'm not exactly sure. Is he from Houston Baptist, a little bit of a smaller school. And he is going to Texas State. So they've got a bunch of people in there. And I think Troy, actually, let's see here. They don't have it on 3, but I'm pretty sure Troy does have a bunch of transfers in as well. And the more this goes through, we'll have better lists to get to. But we see guys like Tez Johnson thinks he can do a little bit better going to a Power 5 school. Again, Oklahoma State would seem to be much better, passing attack than Penn State, whereas, Troy plays defense and runs the football. And then you get a guy like Desmond Trotter, who is just looking for a chance to play. He's got one more year to play. He's been the dutiful backup, and good for him to get a chance to go play if he does. Hopefully he finds that chance. If not, I'm sure South Alabama will welcome him back in with open arms. All right, let's quickly take a look at the basketball schedule coming up after this, as the Sun Belt is kicking off conference play right before the new year. But first, we got to tell you about BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting, info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. From football to basketball to soccer and esports, we've got it all at betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Dave Schultz back on Locked on a Sun Belt. Let's check out quickly. I know where South Alabama is headed. South Alabama, again, 2 home games in like 5 weeks. It's crazy. They are headed to Georgia to take on Georgia Southern and Georgia State, although I'm not exactly sure in that order. Let's see what we can do here. Conference schedules. All right, so this will be from now on Thursday, Saturday ball games with, I think there's a Monday game in there as well. All right, so let's see. South Alabama, Georgia Southern first, and then Georgia State. So Arkansas is headed to Virginia. They'll take on Old Dominion. JMU going to Georgia State. Cajuns over to Coastal Carolina. App State to Marshall. Troy and Southern Miss, maybe the closest travel going on. And then you got Monroe to Texas State. Now, that used to be the Texas two-step, but UTA is not in the league anymore. And then South Alabama to Georgia Southern. All right, so then Saturday, let's see what it is. The Cajuns go to Old Dominion. JMU to Marshall. So JMU plays, I see that right? JMU does a Georgia State ball game, but then they get go to Marshall. South Alabama does get Georgia State. Georgia Southern then goes to Coastal. Monroe to Arkansas State. App State to Southern Miss. And Troy to Texas State. Quickly, let's check out the standings just so we kind of know where we're starting conference play. I think the Cajuns lost one more game, but that was to Texas. Let's see where we are here. In the Sun Belt. All right, so Marshall, 11-2. Southern Miss, 11-2. The Cajuns, 11-2. JMU, 9-4. Old Dominion, 8-4. Arkansas State, 8-5. Troy is 8-5. Georgia State, 7-5. Coastal, 6-5. App State, Georgia Southern, Texas State, all 7-6. South Alabama has won a couple in a row, but they had a little bit of an issue on that day of the bowl game. Yeesh, they needed a late push to beat Jacksonville State. So we'll see what they can do against Georgia Southern and Georgia State. Usually when you do those kind of trips, you're hoping to get one, but neither one of those teams are all that great, so you never know. And then you do come home for 2 straight weekends. So you do get Arkansas State, Texas State, JMU, and the Cajuns coming into town once January rolls around. And then you do have a ULM pulling up the rear. They're just having a tough time of it. They are just 4-9. All right, so on tomorrow's episode, we will preview the last 2 bowl games that the Sun Belt is playing in. They both happen to be in Alabama. You do get the Camellia Bowl. First up, that is Georgia Southern against Buffalo, as the temps are getting a little bit warmer. That's kind of nice. And then you do have Coastal Carolina versus East Carolina. Not necessarily disappointing, but Grayson McCall not going to Auburn, that would have been a much better storyline if he had committed or was able to get into Auburn while playing a football game not too far away from Auburn in Birmingham. So we will preview those ball games for tomorrow's episode. Hoping everybody had a tremendous Christmas and continuing to enjoy the holiday season. Thanks very much for listening. I'm your host, Dave Schultz, and you've been listening to Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day.